Happy Friday! Welcome back to Drinking by My Shelf. My name is Emma and this is the DNF tag. So this tag was created by the brilliant and brilliantly named channel Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. They left me a comment recently encouraging me to do this because I was talking in a video about how I love DNFing. I am the self-proclaimed DNF queen, so I think this tag is absolutely brilliant. For any of you complete booktube newbies, if you do not already know, DNF stands for did not finish. So DNFing a book is when you decide to quit reading it before you get to the end. So question one, starting with a simple one, is do you DNF? And if you hadn't guessed already from that intro, yes, a big resounding yes, of course I do. I will never ever understand people who do not DNF. Because unless you are reading a book for homework, for work, for some kind of other unspecified chore, then reading isn't homework, work, or a chore. It's a joy. It's something we do for fun. Why would you turn it into something horrible? And I say this like I don't understand. I do understand. I am very guilty of this. I turn everything in my life into a task list. I get stressed by like my YouTube watch later playlist or my Netflix queue of things I want to watch because I view everything as a task that I'm failing at. So I do understand, I do get it, but just encourage people to remember that reading is one of the biggest joys in the world. So just remember to keep it that way. If you're not enjoying a book, no one is making you read it. Put that book down, move on, find something else. Because the risk is, I find that if I don't DNF a book, if I don't let myself do that, then I just stop reading entirely because I don't feel like picking that particular book up, so I just leave it, but I can't pick anything else up because I don't want to admit that I've DNF'd that one, and so I end up not reading for weeks. So just let's not do that, okay? I also know some people have rules on when they can DNF, and let's just stop making rules. In general, let's stop making rules for ourselves about reading. But some people say they will only DNF a book if they have got halfway through, or 10% through, or they've read the first 100 pages or something. I will DNF whenever the fuck I want. I will DNF after the first paragraph. I will DNF if I only have 5 pages left to go. If I'm not enjoying reading it anymore, I will just put it down. And I know people are going to comment saying like, what about when you hate reading a book and you really don't like it, but you really want to know what happens? And yeah, of course I do that. But to me, I'm enjoying the reading experience in some way. If I think the book is bad, but I want to know what happens, there's obviously something I'm enjoying. So I might not DNF it because I'm getting something from it. But anytime that I'm actively not getting anything from the reading experience, even the anticipation of what's going to happen, if I'm not getting any of that, then DNF it. Question number 2. If you DNF a book, does it count towards books read for the month? So this is an interesting question. It depends like what you mean. So for me personally, the biggest way I keep track of my books is in my Balancing the Books series. So I do this every month, and this is more in terms of keeping track of what's on my TBR. So I count anything that I haul or borrow or anything that comes onto my physical TBR of books that I own that are on that trolley behind me. They are +1s, and anything I read is -1s because that brings my TBR back down. And in that case, yes, I count DNFs because either way, whether I read the whole thing or just read a bit of it, I got it off my TBR, I got it out of my house. Even if I unhaul a book without reading it at all, that counts as -1. So in terms of what I prioritise in my reading goals, then yes, DNFing counts because it gets books off my TBR, moves them on to new homes. If I was doing like a reading challenge, so in terms of like the Goodreads reading goal, if I DNF a book, I mark it as DNF on Goodreads. I don't mark it as read, so it doesn't count towards my annual reading goal. I don't do monthly reading goals, but it doesn't count to the overall one. But like, I don't really know why, because sometimes I DNF a book like a substantial amount of the way through the book, and then I've put in all that work, so it seems a shame that I don't count it. But yeah, my answer is no. In that case, I don't count it as read unless I read the whole thing. But that's not out of any like ethics or like strict rules. It's just like easier for me to mark it as DNF and forget about it. Question 3. Is there a difference between DNF and just putting it down for a bit? This is a really good question because in theory, yes, big difference. In practice, for me, no, they're exactly the same thing. So I often will differentiate. If I feel like I don't want to keep reading a book right now, a lot of the time I'm happy to DNF them. Every now and then I get books like, for example, I talked about this recently, My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, where I really wanted to DNF it, I wasn't enjoying it, but there was a little part of me that wanted to have read it. My friends said that the series gets better as it goes on. So many people have read and loved it. And so mentally, I differentiated that. Even on Goodreads, I have a different shelf called Rain Check, and I put it into Rain Check instead of DNF because it's like, I'm just putting it down for a little bit. Don't worry, I'll come back to it later. But here's the thing, in reality, no book, literally in the history of me having a Goodreads Rain Check shelf, no book has ever come back from the Rain Check shelf. I clear them out at the end of every year, I clear it out and they all go into DNFs, and nothing has ever come back from there. My battery is now flashing at me, which is really annoying because I literally changed it immediately before sitting down to film this. So I'm going to have to change it again. Obviously didn't charge right, and there's going to be a jump. Now, question number 4. Which popular book did you DNF? I have DNF'd a lot of popular books. Let me open up my DNF shelf in Goodreads right now and let's see. I currently have 71 books in my DNF shelf, and that is just since I started using a DNF shelf, which was probably 4 years ago. So I've DNF'd 71 books in 4 years. Popular books in there, Meet Cute Club, DNF'd that one. The Miniaturist, that's really popular, and I did DNF that one. I'm just not a big historical fiction fan. Red Clocks, that was quite a popular dystopian a few years ago, DNF'd that. Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. I read a lot of it. That's a non-fiction book that, again, was really popular, but the author is kind of transphobic, and I found that out halfway through reading, so I did DNF it. It had some interesting statistics in it, the book, but it just wasn't very inclusive. I don't think the author, well, I don't know. I don't think the author is, like, actively transphobic. We're not talking, like, J.K. Rowling styles. I think she's just hasn't learnt to be inclusive with her feminism, and the book had these really interesting statistics about the way in which so much of the world is set up to exclude women, but she just wasn't really interested in showing how it also excludes trans people, and her particular data she was using excluded trans women from her version of womanhood. So it was problematic. I DNF'd it. Oh my god, there's just so many in here. The first Mistborn book, I DNF'd that. Again, why was I reading that in the first place? It's like hard fantasy, not my thing. Every time I try and read these popular fantasy books, I remember all over again, this is not my genre, this is not for me. So I DNF'd that. DNF'd The Amber Spyglass by Philip Pullman. That's funny that that is in here. I obviously retrospectively added this because I did DNF that book, but I DNF'd it when it came out, when I was like 10, I don't know. I obviously saw it on Goodreads and was like, oh yeah, I DNF'd that one, let's add that to the shelf. Yeah, there were loads in there. Question 5, which book do you wish you had DNF'd? And the thing is, most books that I want to DNF, I do DNF, but there are definitely a few that I've pushed on through with and wished I hadn't, further cementing my point that we should always DNF if we want to. Mainly I can think of ones that I kept reading because I had to, for schoolwork, for example, or at uni I read Less Than Zero by Bret Easton Ellis. I mentioned a minute ago that American Psycho was a book I hated and did DNF. I wish I'd been allowed to DNF Less Than Zero because it was horrible. What a horrible book. I get that it is making a point. I get that it is a commentary on moral detachment in this group of really overprivileged young people in LA, but it doesn't make it any less horrible to read. It's so gross and it's so over the top, and just like, it is a book that made me feel so sad. I remember getting to the end of that book, and I had to read it like more than once because I was studying it. I had to write like a whole essay on it, so I had to read it over and over again. Remember the first time I finished it, just sitting in my little uni room being like, I just feel so sad right now. This has filled me with complete bleak hopelessness, and I love sad books. This wasn't sad, this was just hideous. Ugh, I wish I'd never read it. Question 6. Do you ever attempt to reread a DNF, and has this ever been successful for you? Yes, I definitely attempt to reread DNFs. I actually especially remember the one that, weirdly, the first one that sprung to my mind just then, there was a book called Beauty by Robin McKinley? I'd be impressed if that's right. That when I was a kid, we had, it was a really beautiful book. I can picture the front. I'll see if I can find a picture of the edition we had. But I don't know if it'll even do it justice, because it had like a sort of sheer dust jacket that went over the top and had like detailing. It was really beautiful. It was a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And I tried to read it so many times as a kid. And I remember, I think it probably didn't help because the book ended up living by the loo. It was like a book that lived in the loo. Most people have books in the loo that are like things you can flick through, like little comic strip books or something. But for some reason, this book Beauty ended up by the loo. So whenever I was like on the loo or having a bath or something when I was younger, I would try and read this book. And so I read the opening chapter so many times throughout my childhood, but never felt compelled to take it out of the bathroom and continue reading. So that was an example of one that was not a success. I never read further than the first chapter of Beauty. However, I've definitely done this since. I've definitely re-picked up books that I DNF'd. Has it ever been a success? I'm sure it must have. Let's have a look at my shelf really quickly and see if any of the ones on there I initially DNF'd.
Easy to be misunderstood.
No, I guess if I do this, it's never a success because I couldn't find any books on that shelf that I remember initially DNFing, and I keep all of the books that I enjoyed. So no, I can't think of a time it's been a success. This feels like something that I should have an example for. I'm sure that at some point in my entire reading life, I have DNF'd a book and then later picked it up and loved it. Probably a classic, like maybe I DNF'd Jane Eyre the first time I tried to read it and then read it when I was older. Hang on a minute, what about the book Emma? I think that's an example. I'm pretty certain that the first time I read the book Emma, I DNF'd it. And now I love it. The book Emma by Jane Austen, obviously. I pretty certain I remember taking it on a holiday. I was supposed to read it for school, and over the spring holiday, I took it with me on holiday, didn't get into it, and DNF'd it because I remember coming to class being like, oh shit, I haven't read the book. There you go. That's a really good success story because now I fucking love Emma by Jane Austen. I will also say that when I was browsing those shelves, there were a couple on there that I remember almost DNFing. Like I could have DNF'd them and I decided to push on through a little bit longer and then ended up loving the book. So I guess I shouldn't say that out loud because this is the reason people always give for not DNFing, is they're like, what if I end up loving it? So I will say that my answer to that is there are so many more books in the world than you will ever read. There are so many infinite numbers of books that you will love. So if you DNF a book that potentially you could have ended up loving later on, don't freak out about it. It doesn't matter. You want to DNF it, you weren't enjoying it at that time, you will find one of the other, or many of the other many books out there that are for you that you will love. So if you DNF a book too soon and it turns out that you would have loved it if you kept going, I don't think that's something to freak out about. I don't think it matters. You'll read something else that you love instead. I'm saying that, but secretly I'm internally panicking because when I was looking, I was like, oh my god, a lot of my favorite books I nearly DNF'd because I was just not in the mood. Now I'm like, well, maybe I've DNF'd some books way too soon, but let's not go down that route. No, we are pro DNFers here. Question 7 is what do you do with books you DNF? I get rid of them. I get rid of any book that I didn't like. I only keep books that I gave like a 4 or 5 stars on my bookshelf. Anything else goes to friends, goes to charity, gets out of my life, out of my hair, out of my house. Question 8. Do you choose more or less risky titles because of your stance on DNFs? This is actually a really important point that I always want to make when I'm talking about DNFs. Yes, I think I definitely choose more risky titles because I know I'm happy to DNF. And I often wonder this, like with people who are so strict against DNFing, does that limit you? Does that mean that you only pick up those books that you're so sure you're going to like? So you stay so firmly within your comfort zone because you don't want that feeling of ending up dragging yourself through a book that you're not liking? Because that sucks. I feel like I do have my comfort zone, but I'm not deeply afraid of trying other things. You saw on my DNF shelf, it was full of these high fantasy books. I'm not scared of trying them. I'm not scared of giving them a go because I know that if I don't like it, if I'm not having fun, I can just put it down and walk away. So I definitely think that having the freedom to DNF means that you're more free in what you choose to pick up. I say this, I'm not super brave. My book club will know that whenever they suggest books that are anything outside my particular area I always complain about it. But I think that's because I'm less likely to DNF for the book club. I have DNF'd some of our book club books, but in general, I don't want to DNF because I want to join in the conversation, and so I will, in that case, push myself through reading it because I want that experience. And so that does actually apply. Like in that case where I know I'm probably not going to DNF, I am always really reluctant for us to read anything that is too far outside my comfort zone. You anti-DNFers, restricting people's choices. My bookshelf, my choice. Oh, and that's it. Question 9 is to tag 5 booktube buddies. Okay, who am I going to tag? I hadn't thought about this. I am going to tag Meg with books because I know that she like almost never DNFs, so she will have very, very different answers and I want to see those. As I'm tagging Meg, I'm also going to tag Tasman from Tea Books and Tasman because we 3 are hosting a readathon together, so, you know, we just do everything together now. That was 2 people. Who else do I know? I'm obviously going to tag Emma Tobias because I love her and I want to tag her in everything I do in my life. I wish my camera would stay focused on my face. Focus. God, how to think of 5 whole friends, that's so many. I would also like to tag Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe because I realised just now I have no idea what her stance is on DNFing, so I'd like to find out. And finally, I am going to cheat here. I would like to tag Plots with a Twist because then I get 2 whole people's opinions because they run their channel together. So I will link all of them below. You're all tagged. Anyone else who wants to do it is also tagged. I would love to hear your opinion on DNFing, but just know that I have strong opinions, and if you say that you don't DNF, I will tell you that you're wrong. So sorry, I just will tell you that. So thanks so much for watching, and thanks again to Gunpowder Fiction and Plot for tagging me in this video. Well, they didn't really tag me, they just like told me in my comments that they had the tag and that I should do it. Does that count as tagging me? I think that counts as tagging me. So thank you to them for inventing these fun questions, and let me know your opinions on DNFing in the comments below, and I will see you guys soon. Bye!